If you saw the title of this video and don't already know, yes, there is a difference between flying cars and hover cars. Flying cars float or fly in the air 6 feet or more up to the height of buildings or even to the height of clouds. Yes, I agree. It's a very stupid idea to have flying cars on a mass scale. There's a high risk of people crashing, considering how much people do it already. You think adding new directions of movement is a good idea? People already crash enough as is. Flying is significantly more difficult than driving. Not to mention the amount of air traffic control it would take so that hovercars don't collide with each other or other aircraft. You also can't fly over certain areas like military bases who have a ban on drones right now, but certainly would ban flying cars from flying over and around the bases, national parks, or any restricted airspace. So that includes the zone around the White House, Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, even Disneyland and Disney World. Can't fly your cars near or around that vicinity. Even religious and cultural sites, such as the Taj Mahal and Machu Picchu, prevent vehicles from flying overhead, such as helicopters. Additionally, even the airspace above active wildfires is restricted due to the safety of aerial firefighting operations. You could drive away from a forest fire just fine, but flying away from it might be a lot of trouble since you don't know what direction the smoke could go in. If it's going in your direction and you're trying to fly away, that could be not a good day for you. I would just say. You can't fly near any of these areas I just mentioned, and they would have to bend a lot of rules, including a lot more safety features in cars, and account for a lot more things if they were going to make flying cars much more common. Meanwhile, hovercars would hover about 30 to 35 inches off the ground, maybe up to 40 inches just to be safe. Most car tires have a diameter of about 25 to 30 inches, so you don't have to worry about some drunk driver crashing into your roof while you're watching the 6 o'clock news. Not only that, but hover cars would naturally use less power than flying cars. They don't fly up as high, so just in terms of physics and common sense, regardless of what power source we're talking about, hover cars would use a lot less power than flying cars. And despite what I've said so far, I do think flying cars have some use in the future, mainly as sky taxis, emergency medical vehicles, and military transports flying by trained flyers and drivers, with plenty of air traffic control involved. I would see them kind of taking over the role of helicopters to some extent, but not as daily drivers for everybody. At this point in the video, you may wonder why we don't stick to regular tired vehicles that we use right now. Well, there are several reasons. One of which being road maintenance and damage. The weight and speed of our vehicles constantly wear down on the road, made worse by electric vehicles that are even heavier and go through more tires than the gasoline ones do. Hovercars wouldn't really interact much with the road at all, so this problem won't nearly be as bad, as well as the benefit of avoiding road hazards entirely, ice, potholes, and debris on the road. We'll discuss how hovercars would interact with the road later on in this video. Next issue here is tire and noise pollution. Tires actually produce more pollution than exhaust from modern cars. Tests show that tires emit 36 milligrams of particles per kilometer compared to just 0.02 from tailpipes. So yeah, tires are actually the culprit. If you are one of the environmental types, tires are actually the culprit of most of that damage. Not even the emissions from the tailpipes, because all the tire, as it drives, it releases all these particulates into the air. Again, EVs go through more of these because they're heavier, so the tires just wear off faster. This is not an anti-EV video, but these are just factual points I'm making here. And above a certain speed, tires actually generate more noise than the engine. Now, there's like motorcycles and people with giant V8 engines where the engine is pretty loud, but for the most part, tires actually produce most of the noise. If you live by a roadway, listen, and you'll probably hear mostly tires interacting with pavement and concrete, and not really the engines. Another problem is we need to worry about constant flats and filling our air every so often. Like when the seasons change, you don't want cold air in the tires when it's hot outside. Now, don't go removing all the tires in your car just yet. Tires do have some upsides. For instance, there's already an existing infrastructure. There's companies that produce it. Of course, it's easy to just keep using it. Not to mention our current road rules and safety regulations are for tired vehicles. They'd have to change for hovercars, as we're about to see later on. Tires work on and off road. You can go mudding, go up and down the terrain, you can go camping. Need to change anything about our roads right now. Any layman can also replace a tire. The driver doesn't need to know any technical know-how. Although there are some people that struggle with this, most people know how to change a tire. There's also a simple and reliable braking system. We'll discuss why hovercars may have this problem later on. But we do need friction to stop. Even in the near future, when we may advance to some kind of future tires, whether they be airless or not, it would still have a lot of the same drawbacks I just mentioned. Now, on to how hovercars compare to tired ones. First, let's discuss the method of levitation. There have been methods proposed where we would basically put magnets in the roads and in the cars, and the cars would levitate above the roads using that technology. Much like maglev trains, the rolling stock is levitated by magnets rather than rolled on wheels, eliminating any friction to allow for higher speeds, superior acceleration, and lower maintenance. They operate using two levitation methods: electromagnetic suspension, which uses attractive forces to lift the train about 1 centimeter above the track, and the electrodynamic suspension, which uses repulsive forces from superconducting magnets to levitate the train approximately 10 centimeters from the guideway. There are 7 operational lines globally right now, but most are in Asia. Humans have already created this level of technology, but actually adding it all to our road infrastructure would be very complicated and require a massive overhaul to our current road and highway infrastructure, not just for one country, but for the entire world, as well as not being very cost efficient. You have to think back before cars came along, everyone was using horse and buggy. The entire infrastructure was built around that. And with a great enough of a need, that can't change. There used to be horses eating hay, people cleaning up after horse poop, barrels full of water so the horses can drink, and whatever, right? They all got replaced when the car came along. And the same thing could happen here. So it is possible. I just don't think that's the direction we should go because it's very costly. And with the other methods, you can keep the road infrastructure pretty much the same, and the cars would still hover. So I elect to go in the other direction. Whether this be through an additional fuel or power source, or some concepts which have the car made out of a kind of a mesh, and using fans, the car floats and it begins to fly. And the car even has tires, so the tires would see some use, but for the most part, the car could just hover. Whatever propulsion/levitation system we end up going with, whether that be through some kind of engine, blades, fans, some anti-gravity, some booster rockets, or whatever, it's going to need maintenance. A layman can't really repair boosters, or I guess they can kind of repair and oil blades, but this is a little bit more complex than just a tire. One problem that I alluded to for hovercars is, since it's completely off the ground for the most part, it doesn't really interact with the pavement. How exactly would the car brake and turn? As I said before, wheeled cars use friction to slow down and turn and brake. Now, for hovercars, we can borrow some technology from airplanes. That being air brakes, we can place them on the top of vehicles. We don't want them coming out from the sides and hitting other vehicles, but when you brake, they would simply fold up and increase the amount of air resistance to help you stop. It can even be segmented into 3 parts, so that the faster you need to stop, the more parts pop up and create more air resistance. There's the next technology called flywheels. These can be used to stop vehicles or machines by acting as energy-absorbing brakes. When engaged, the flywheel captures the vehicle's kinetic energy, causing the vehicle to slow down while the flywheel spins faster and faster to store the momentum. This stored energy can be used later to accelerate the vehicle. Effectively recycling energy would be wasted as heat in traditional friction brakes. Finally, there's reversible motors. Reversible motors can be used to stop, but they're primarily designed to rapidly reverse directions, so it'd be more like a reverse function than actually braking. But still, that technology exists. And of course, all 3 of these things can be used in tandem to stop the vehicle. It's not like we just have to pick one. Another thing to note is that if whatever method of levitation produces heat, we want some kind of landing gear to keep the engine or booster up off the ground so it doesn't light the grass on fire or any other flammable materials nearby. While the levitation may be useful, it will require ongoing maintenance. Much like tires do today, it's not as if all the maintenance will go away. That'll require some kind of maintenance, I'm sure of it. And whatever kind of power source or method of levitation will cause some kind of environmental damage. When you're moving 2-ton vehicles or more, the energy source that's required to move it, you'll have to damage the environment somehow to get it. That's just a fact of the matter. So, not having tires would make roads last longer, resulting in less road construction, less pollution, less noise, less particulate matter that tires produce, and there will likely be less tire debris that you could potentially drive over. Having considered everything, I still think hovercars are the best option versus flying or wheeled vehicles. Well, that about wraps up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I didn't mention in my first 2 videos, but expect weekly videos to come out, unless I say otherwise. But thanks for watching, and I will see you guys all next time.